Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. A lot of Spider-Man Homecoming hype happening right now. People are going crazy about getting Carnage into the new movies, so I'm going to explain what's going on in a general history for his character in the comics and on the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show. There's a couple different versions of him, and surprise, surprise, he actually debuted around the time Deadpool debuted. So a bunch of people are talking about Carnage being in the new Spider-Man Sony Marvel films, and even though it's too late to get him into Spider-Man Homecoming, there's a trilogy, so there's plenty of room for other versions of the symbiote. And Carnage, just to explain who he is basically like a spin-off version of the Venom symbiote. So if you guys haven't ever seen it, there's actually an Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon on Disney XD where they've done a bunch of different versions of the characters, including Anti-Venom, which is like a whole other thing, but it's very different from the comics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain who Carnage is, his story in the comics, some of the big storylines if you really want to read a Carnage story, because they're actually trying to do some really cool stuff with him in the Darkhold, which gets into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff that's happening on TV now. So he's like very present in what's happening with the Spider-Man character in movies and TV, even if it's a long shot that we would see him in a movie. And I think the big reason why Lin-Manuel wants to play Carnage, and I think he's referring to the Cletus Cassidy, like the crazy, insane version of Carnage from the comics, is just because it's such an interesting spin on a character that you don't normally see in big movies like this. So the crazier actors get to be in movies, the more fun it tends to be for them. So like a really good example of that is Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki. Really amazing performance that he's had in the Marvel Universe so far. But when they were originally casting that first Thor movie, he went to like his friend Kenneth Branagh, who was directing the movie, and asked him about reading for Thor. And he was like, no, you don't want to play Thor. You want to play Loki. It'll be way more fun for you.
We always were putting our chips on Loki. We believed in him as a character. Had Tom not brought him to life in a way the audience responded to, it probably wouldn't have gone anywhere.
At first Tom was up for Thor. He trained, he came in, he was ripped, he was swinging the hammer in the ring. He did a tremendous job, but he wasn't Thor. And the moment he came in and read, though, he was Loki.
You're my son. I wanted only to protect you from the truth.
What, because I'm the monster parents tell their children about at night? It all makes sense now why you favored Thor all these years. Because no matter how much you claim to love me, you could never have a frost giant sitting on the throne of Asgard.
So that's like a whole other story, because there actually is like a screen test of Tom Hiddleston dressed like Thor, auditioning for Thor. But as we know, he ended up going for Loki. He slimmed down and became one of the best villains that Marvel's ever had. So I think that's why people want to play a lot of crazy villains in the Marvel Universe. Carnage literally being insane, like he is actually certified crazy. Most of the villains in the Marvel Universe are normal people that go crazy. But the whole idea behind the Carnage character is that part of the Venom symbiote, which is already a pretty evil thing by itself, who gets bonded to a person who is legitimately insane. Like Venom bonds to Eddie Brock, he just has a big beef against Spider-Man, and it just heightens some of his more violent tendencies. But imagine the Venom symbiote bonded to someone who was already a really bad serial killer in a maximum security prison, which as a little kid was my first encounter with the character. So just to start with comic book Carnage, I'll explain the Ultimate Spider-Man version of Carnage too, because that's kind of a blend of a bunch of different storylines and arcs from the Spider-Man comics. So way back in the early 90s, like pretty close to when the time Deadpool debuted, Carnage debuted. This is the time in Marvel Comics when they're getting super hardcore. So of course you have like two of the craziest characters in their history debuting. But Eddie Brock is currently a prisoner in Rikers Island prison. He does not have the Venom symbiote. He's been separated for it. That's why he's locked up. Otherwise he'd break out instantly if he had the symbiote. But as the symbiote begins to run free and eventually makes its way to Rikers, where Eddie Brock is, his cellmate Cletus Cassidy also gets bonded to a piece of it and becomes the Carnage character, killing a guard, escaping, going on a rampage. So there was about a year between the time Cletus Cassidy first appeared as like Eddie Brock's cellmate in Rikers Island prison and when he actually took on the Carnage persona. So the way they explain Carnage is that the Venom symbiote, when it was trying to rescue Eddie Brock inside Rikers, said that it was pregnant, which is like a crazy idea, but you have to remember this is the early 90s. So when they did it on the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, they actually turned it into this Green Goblin plot where he makes a special version of the Venom symbiote and tries to inject Peter Parker with it, turning him into Carnage. So TV Carnage has like a slightly more believable origin story, but comic book Cletus Cassidy Carnage is just a super deep cut. So it's always fun to see what Marvel does with the character. So he's been around for a long time, but Carnage was just meant to be like the uber version of Venom. Like Spider-Man has a lot of big battles with the Venom symbiote. It's very powerful, it's bonded to someone who's mostly there all up top, but you have to imagine like if the Venom symbiote bonded to someone who was just completely insane, the horrors that they would unleash. So just like the things that the Carnage symbiote would do were just so much freakier than Venom. But the powers of the symbiote are actually relatively malleable. Like it really just depends on the person that it's bonded to. So Venom could do this stuff too, it's just that he's not that crazy. So originally in the comics, Carnage debuts and he's this villain that's just so over the top, Spider-Man can't defeat him by himself. So the twist, as you would imagine, is that he needs the help of Eddie Brock Venom to take down this new symbiote, because the only thing that Venom hates more than Spider-Man right now is this new symbiote. So they team up, take Carnage down, and then go back to being enemies. So on the Spider-Man animated TV show, there are actually two versions of the Carnage character. The first one was a variation on the Venom symbiote that Norman Osborn tried to inject Peter Parker with. For a brief time, he became Carnage. Then a couple seasons later, in season 4, they did a symbiote saga storyline. It was kind of a blend of a couple different Spider-Man arcs, including Maximum Carnage in Spider Island. Maximum Carnage was just a storyline where Carnage, a couple years after he debuted in the comics, broke out of an insane asylum again, recruited his own version of the Sinister Six, and went on like a mass killing spree in the city that a bunch of heroes, including Spider-Man and Venom, had to team up to stop him. Spider Island was a storyline that involved the anti-Venom that helped cure this spider virus that was turning people into like mutated giant spiders. So they kind of combined those arcs for the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon to do their symbiote storyline, which was basically like a 3-part story. So you have the Carnage symbiote that debuts, you need anti-Venom to take them down. Anti-Venom is like a completely separate idea. It's basically a mutated version of the original Venom symbiote that bonds with Eddie Brock's white blood cells and becomes a symbiote capable of healing any disease. So they use it to cure this giant spider virus that's turning everybody into giant man spiders. So really like one of the biggest differences between the Carnage symbiote and the Venom symbiote is that Venom needs a host to bond to in order to, take physical form. The Carnage symbiote does not need that. Now you have to remember it's the offspring of the Venom symbiote, so it's a little bit different. It's not like an exact copy, but it's just meant to be like the freaky, craziest possible version you could imagine of the Venom symbiote. So they might choose to do Spider Virus or, a version of Spider Island or a Venom story arc in the new movies, but it'll take them a long time to get to Carnage because you kind of have to do the Venom symbiote first. And Sony was originally planning a Venom spin-off Spider-Man movie before they made the deal with Marvel, so that's all kind of up in the air now. Like they were going to make a Sinister Six movie, but this was during Andrew Garfield era, so they're still doing that stuff, but it's kind of been backburnered because of the new Spider-Man Homecoming trilogy. So what I think they'll probably do is slowly weave in the idea of Venom in the Spider-Man movies eventually, and then just kind of try and do it off as a separate thing. It just depends on what the tone of these Spider-Man movies are going to be. Because he's going to be in high school for the duration of his new trilogy, I really think that Venom Carnage is better left for like super early phase 5 if it's going to be a Marvel joint, but it almost seems like it would be easier for them if they were to do what they were originally planning on doing and just do Venom as a separate thing and then introduce Carnage during that storyline, because Carnage is really a twist on a Venom idea, so those two characters just go hand in hand, and I just love the idea that there's somebody that Venom hates more than Peter Parker. But the big twist of the Spider-Man Homecoming movie, this first movie, is that all these kids are in high school and you have characters that will eventually become Hobgoblin. You have Flash Thompson, who himself became Venom Space Knight eventually, like one of the hosts of the Venom symbiote. And they all just seem like super buddies, so you just know that something terrible has to happen between them eventually. But let me know in the comments, how do you think that Sony and Marvel would choose to do the Venom and Carnage characters? Do you think that we'll ever see them in the main Marvel films that they're making, or do you think that they'll try to just do spin-off movies by themselves? So there are a couple other Marvel videos that I want to do this weekend. They're teasing a brand new Inhuman on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like a new mystery Inhuman, so I'll probably do a video for that. And Kevin Feige just confirmed that Captain Marvel is going to be the most powerful character, good character, that they've ever done. Now, like we've seen Odin, we've seen Dormammu, we've seen Thanos, so there are also other super powerful characters, but I think he was talking mostly about heroes that are going to be getting their own solo spin-off movies. So that Captain Marvel video will probably be next, so I'll post that in a little while. While you guys wait for that to post, you can click here for that funny Spider-Man Tom Holland video, and you can click here for the latest huge trailer for the Flash Fortnite crossover. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.